So it's all come down to this. A dungeon and dragons. I didn't see it coming.
Hi, I'm David X. Cohen, executive producer of Futurama, and it probably will not shock you to learn that I played a fair amount of Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, so Dungeons and Dragons did have quite an influence on me and ultimately on Futurama itself. With me today is my fellow writer, Eric Kaplan, who also had a passing interest in the game.
What ho, wizards and hobgoblins!
I'm writer Mike Rowe, and I have somewhat less interest in the game.
When I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, we could not wrap our minds around the idea that there was a game that did not have a board. So we drew this one dungeon. This is my friend Roy's handwriting. I don't know if you can see this here. This is a Xerox of the original, but we drew this one dungeon, and we would repopulate the dungeon with different monsters and traps and things like that from adventure to adventure, but it was always this dungeon, so we could look at a board on the table until we figured out the general idea that you could actually use your mind in this game.
You know, I'll never forget my first game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Now let's take a look at some scenes from Futurama that were influenced by Dungeons and Dragons. This is a scene from episode 201, I second that emotion, and here Leela has brought Nibbler to the veterinarian's office, and we see what appears to be a rust monster from D&D there on the ground. And the rust monster was a monster who ate ferrous metal, that's iron-based metal, so if you were wearing iron armor, or steel armor, and the rust monster attacked you, your armor would fall into a pile of rust, which the rust monster would then eat.
I had a dungeon which had a rust monster in one room, and then in the next room a large dog which could bite you.
You know what's interesting about the rust monster? Nothing!
This is episode 211, How Hermes requisitioned his groove back. And in this scene we see a creature that slightly resembles a Dungeons and Dragons monster called the Beholder, or Beholder Beast, or the Eye Tyrant, or the Sphere of Many Eyes, which was very close to my heart because my friend Om Prakash was a fan of it and had a batik beholder hung up in his basement where we used to play.
And I guess the fact that the Beholder had so many eyes made it a good guard here at the central bureaucracy where our crew has infiltrated. Is that what he's doing there?
Well, that's an interesting question. I always assumed he was just working there, possibly typing or filing.
Well, he does have a number 11 badge, so he is a bureaucrat grade 11, so you may have a valid point there.
I may. I just may.
Here we have a scene from episode 210, A Clone of My Own, and it appears that it's the professor as a young man when he was the dungeon master of his game, and I would have to say it looks like we're perpetuating a stereotype here by having the professor in a dungeon master's shirt, which may not be that realistic. What do you think, Eric?
It's unrealistic. I think it's classified as hate speech.
And the fact that he's got glasses and braces, I find that all to be a ridiculous stereotype that bears no resemblance to me when I had glasses and braces.
To my left, you'll recognize Gary Gygax, inventor of Dungeons and Dragons.
Greetings. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Here we see Gary Gygax himself, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, who generously appeared in episode 216, Anthology of Interest 1. And he was part of Al Gore's team of super nerds who helped save the Earth. So thank you, Gary Gygax, for joining us.
Let's try something else. Maybe we should...
Put the dice away before I take them away.
Sadly, Gary Gygax passed away recently, so we dedicated Bender's game to his memory.
Anyone want to play Dungeons and Dragons for the next quadrillion years?
Sure, I guess.
On to Rook 8.
I'm a 10th level vice president.
And Eric, you have a story about
Yeah, when we were first thinking of contacting him, I searched for him on the internet, which was sort of a new and exciting idea back then, and he actually answered my letter, and I asked him if he had invented role-playing games, and he very modestly said, no, as long as kids have been playing cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians, they've been playing role-playing games. So I thought that was an interesting perspective from Gary Gygax.
Yes! 10!
And of course, These are some scenes from Futurama's ultimate tribute to Dungeons & Dragons, Bender's Game, which is all about Dungeons & Dragons as it exists in the worlds of fantasy and the 80s fear or urban legend that Dungeons & Dragons would make our children go insane, and that they would take to the tunnels beneath the University of Michigan, dressed in chainmail, and kill each other with swords, and forget the difference between fantasy role-playing games and real life. And this was based on an actual incident that happened with the game Chutes and Ladders, where a bunch of kids would lose track of the boundary between Chutes and Ladders and real life and create a gigantic board with ladders and chutes and kittens that if you teased them, they'd scratch you, and if you studied hard, you'd go to the head of the class, and everyone went insane and was very, very sorry they had done that.
I have nothing to add to that.
You know, as long as we're here in my mom's basement, maybe we can play a little Dungeons & Dragons.
Sure, sounds good.
I think I might have some dice on me.
Hit!
Man, I think you may be a little too into this, Eric.
I think I'm just into it enough.
Okay, if you think this is normal, you're welcome to your opinion.
I don't like your tone of voice, you scurvy son of a lycanthropic neo-yuff.
All right, there is no need to get nasty, Eric.
Oh, I'll show you nasty.
We're trying to have a nice
I'm
time
going to
here.
banish you to the 25th
All right,
plane of
okay.
pandemonium.
Very funny.
Eric! Come upstairs from the basement for once in your life. It's a nice day. Go out and get some sun.
Ma, I'm a grown man. I can do whatever I want.
All right, well, your SpaghettiOs are in the oven if you get hungry.
SpaghettiOs? Game over.